And it's the only conversation, just me at the end of the world. They tune in while I drone on and on. And it feels like a vacation, just me at the end of the world. Sitting in the pool at the Hotel Bon Vivant. Bon vivant, I'm a bon vivant. Sitting in the pool at the Hotel Bon Vivant.
Okay, I think I'm in the frame. I've been trying to do this episode for a long time. I did it in full and then had to delete it because the sound was all bad. Then we went to the MUFON Symposium in Covington, Kentucky over August 24th and 25th. And I actually figured out why it was a good thing I had to redo the shoot of this episode. So this, I think I'm going to call this Encountering the Unknown, Healing. And if you're new to the channel, and some of you may be, I try not to give my opinion. And just tell what I've seen, or more often, what I've found in my research. And I'm researching the writings of a little-known mystical Eastern faith. And it has some interesting things to say about ufology and cryptozoology and things. And that's why I'm getting heavily into it. And this one's going to be about healing. I've got a couple of friends that feel called to become healers. Plus some things happened that I'll tell you about as we get going. But I think what makes this interesting, if to whatever extent it is probably the quotations that I found. And so I'm just going to lead with those and see where they take us today. And here's the first one. Not everything that a man knoweth can be disclosed, nor can everything that he can disclose be regarded as timely, nor can every timely utterance be considered as suited to the capacity of those who hear it. Such is the consummate wisdom to be observed in thy pursuits. Be not oblivious thereof, if thou wishest to be a man of action under all conditions. First, diagnose the disease and identify the malady, then prescribe the remedy, for such is the perfect method of the skillful physician. And that's from selections of the writings of Abdu'l-Baha. That struck me because Mike Cleland, who is known, I now know, as the Owl Guy in UFO circles, was speaking at the symposium now just over a week ago, I guess. And I'd never heard him speak before. I'd never read any of his stuff. Still haven't. I'm going to. He's got a book out called The Messenger, which is about owls. And he said something in a YouTube blog about someone he had spoke to, said you should read 1,000 reports and do 100 interviews, and then you're ready for your own experience. And that struck me as similar to the quote I just read, although not exactly, but strikingly similar in that you need to back up what you're going to be doing with more experience than you have to start. And then he talked about, in this interview, I've looked for the interview and I would give you the link to it if I could, because it was really good, But with YouTube, sometimes it's hard to search back and find where you were. So then here was another one in the interview that I had already done these quotations, and in the interview he seemed to be saying very similar things. He was talking about asking for a sign, just, in reference to owls, asking for a sign of some kind for some reason. I can't think what. But I had already had this quotation down in my notes here. During thy supplications to God and thy reciting, thy name is my healing, which is the beginning of a prayer that I've said in other episodes with regarding things happening on the farm. I've said that prayer out loud on the farm by myself thousands of times at this point. During thy supplications, consider how thine heart is cheered, thy soul delighted by the spirit of the love of God, and thy mind attracted to the kingdom of God. By these attractions, one's ability and capacity increase. When the vessel is enlarged, the water increases, and when the thirst grows, the bounty of the cloud becomes agreeable to the taste of man. This is the mystery of supplication and the wisdom of stating one's wants. That's the words of Abdu'l-Baha, quoted by J.E. Esselmont in a book called Baha'u'llah in the New Era. So as we were listening to this YouTube channel about 11 o'clock on Thursday night before the symposium actually began the next day, I was just struck that he would be talking about, asking for a sign, and here I had this quotation about, the mystery of supplication. Okay, I read that, thy name is my healing, just that first line. Here's the entire prayer. It's one of the more powerful prayers, so these writings say, but it's also a very short one, and it goes like this, quote, Thy name is my healing, O my God, and remembrance of thee is my remedy. Nearness to thee is my hope, and love for thee is my companion. Thy mercy to me is my healing and my succor in both this world and the world to come. Thou verily art the all-bountiful, the all-knowing, the all-wise. That's a prayer by Baha'u'llah. Another quote. O handmaid of God, the prayers which were revealed to ask for healing apply both to physical and spiritual healing. Recite them, then, to heal both the soul and the body. If healing is right for the patient, it will certainly be granted. But for some ailing persons, healing would only be the cause of other ills, and therefore wisdom doth not permit an affirmative answer to the prayer. Again, selections from the writings of Abdu'l-Baha. Now there was a section, let's see, this is in, I think it's called Paris, well, it's not Paris Talks. Not sure where this is from. It might be a talk at 309 West 78th Street, New York, on June 8, 1912. Notes by John G. Grundy. I just find this kind of relevant still. Quote, the body politic today is greatly in need of a physician. It is similar to a human body afflicted with severe ailments. A doctor diagnoses the cause and prescribes treatment. He does not prescribe, however, until he has made the diagnosis. The disease which afflicts the body politic is lack of love and absence of altruism. In the hearts of men no real love is found, and the condition is such that, unless their susceptibilities are quickened by some power so that unity, love, and accord may develop within them, there can be no healing, no agreement among mankind. Love and unity are the needs of the body politic today. Without these, there can be no progress or prosperity attained. Therefore, the friends of God must adhere to the power which will create this love and unity in the hearts of the sons of men. Science cannot cure the illness of the body politic. Science cannot create amity and fellowship in human hearts. Neither can patriotism nor racial allegiance effect a remedy. It must be accompanied solely through the divine bounties and spiritual bestowals which have descended from God in this day for that purpose. This is an exigency of the times, and the divine remedy has been provided. The spiritual teachings of the religion of God can alone create this love, unity, and accord in human hearts. Now there's another whole section on healing by spiritual means, and then it got down to a section called healing by material means. And I put this in the notes, so I'm going to read it for you now. This has been 2 weeks ago, and I honestly don't remember. Pardon me, my mouth's a little dry. Honestly don't remember what it's saying here. Let's see. I've noticed from painting that just because I like a painting doesn't mean that anybody else likes it. So I'm going to read these because it doesn't matter whether they have meaning for me at this moment. They may have meaning for somebody out there, one of you, and you'll just have to decide for yourself. Okay, first one, quote, "We mentioned in connection with the question of spiritual medicine and healing how illnesses can be cured through spiritual powers. Now we will speak of material healing. The science of medicine is still in its infancy and has not yet reached maturity. But when it reaches that stage, treatments will be administered with things that are not repulsive to the senses of taste and smell. That is, through foods, fruits, and plants that have an agreeable taste and a pleasant smell. For the cause of the intrusion of illness into the human body is either a physical agent or a nervous excitement and stimulation. As to physical agents, which are the primary cause of illness, their effect is due to the following. The human body is composed of numerous elements according to a particular state of equilibrium. So long as this equilibrium is maintained, man is preserved from sickness. But should this fundamental balance, which is the central requirement of a sound constitution, be upset, the constitution will be disrupted and illnesses will supervene. Now, the equilibration of these bodily components can be accomplished by one of two means, either through medicines or with foods. And when the constitution has recovered its equilibrium, the illness is banished. Since all the constituent elements of the human body are also found in plants, if one of these components were to become deficient, and if one were to partake of foods that are rich in that component, then equilibrium would be restored and the cure realized. So long as the aim is the equilibration of the component parts of the body, this can be equally effected through medicines or various foods. Now, my friends who are going into healing are not thinking of medical school. they're thinking of alternate uh, alternate disciplines, I think you would say. More like the First Nations people, the shaman sort of thing. And I thought that these kind of applied to that. And it's also funny that just a couple of days ago, I had my annual checkup. And I confess it was my first annual checkup in about 45 years. I've been to the doctor for other things when I got hurt or that, but going to the doctor in 2013 for an initial checkup, basically they know what I told them. And that's okay. I mean, they asked me a list of pointed questions to make sure that as an old person, I wasn't wandering around with a lot of, trip hazards, that sort of thing. But the spiritual component, through no fault of their own, I suppose, was completely left out of the discussion, what discussion there was. And I don't think that's necessarily a good thing, especially also given the state of mental illness in the country and people worrying about, well, just mental illness, anxiety, and all that other sort of stuff. It kind of came up through the questions, but not really. And that kind of left me feeling like, to say that I didn't really feel like I had been treated, that isn't it. But they did not communicate that they really care about me, if you know what I mean. Let me go on here. The majority of the illnesses that afflict man also afflict animals, but the animal does not treat them through medicines. The animal's physician is in the mountains and the wilderness is its powers of taste and smell. The sick animal smells the plants that grow in the wilderness, eats those that its smell and taste find to be sweet and fragrant, and is cured. The reason is this. When, for example, the sugar component in its body becomes deficient, it craves sweet things and thus eats of sweet-tasting plants, for nature so urges and guides it. Thus the animal eats things that are pleasing to its smell and taste. The sugar component increases, and it regains its health. Abdu'l-Baha in Some Answered Questions, page 73. Okay, let me go on to one more. This from a long time ago. Abdu'l-Baha apparently visited Paris back before World War I, I think. And he said this, quote, "The city of Paris is very beautiful, a more civilized and well-appointed town in all material development it would be impossible to find in the present world. But the spiritual light has not shone upon her for a long time. Her spiritual progress is far behind that of her material civilization. A supreme power is needed to awaken her to the reality of spiritual truth, to breathe the breath of life into her dormant soul. You must all unite in this work of arousing her and reanimating her people by the help of that superior force. When an illness is slight, a small remedy will suffice to heal it, but when the slight illness becomes a terrible disease, then a very strong remedy must be used by the divine healer. There are some trees that blossom and bear fruit in a cool climate. Others there are which need the hottest rays of the sun to bring them to perfect maturity. Paris is one of those trees for whose spiritual unfoldment a great flaming sun of divine power of God is needed. And it goes on. I will read it anyway. I'm not sure. Now I'll go ahead. I ask you all, each one of you, to follow well the light of truth in the holy teachings, and God will strengthen you by his Holy Spirit so that you will be enabled to overcome the difficulties and to destroy the prejudices which cause separation and hatred amongst the people. Let your hearts be filled with the great love of God. Let it be felt by all, for every man is a servant of God, and all are entitled to share of the divine bounty. That's in Paris Talks, Part 1. For every man is a servant of God, and all are entitled to share of the divine bounty. Now, I mention every man in a way that, the same way that Steve Istall talks about when people see the forest people, they tell you how much they look like people, mankind. And I don't say that every man as opposed to every woman. I mean that in the sense of mankind, all of us as a group. And I wanted to mention that here because throughout these writings, they use human when they mean human, and I think they use mankind when it applies to all of the species in the kingdom of mankind. That's why this one is in here. And if you haven't heard me mention that before, it's because there are 4 kingdoms of mankind mentioned in these writings. Mineral, vegetable, animal, and man. And that is what makes up physical creation, these writings say. So, make of that what you will. Okay, I've got another one highlighted here concerning healing. Quote, good behavior and high moral character must come first, for unless the character be trained, acquiring knowledge will only prove injurious. Knowledge is praiseworthy when it is coupled with ethical conduct and virtuous character. Otherwise, it is a deadly poison, a frightful danger. A physician of evil character and who betrayeth his trust can bring on death and become the source of numerous infirmities and diseases. Okay, now I'll read another one. Think of the world as an emanation. Think of it in terms of when people are talking about the world as a hologram. Quote, grieve thou not over the troubles and hardships of this nether world, nor be thou glad in times of ease and comfort, for both shall pass away. This present life is even as a swelling wave, or a mirage, or drifting shadows. Could ever a distorted image on the desert serve as refreshing waters? No, by the Lord of Lords. Never can reality and the mere semblance of reality be one. And wide is the difference between fancy and fact, between truth and the phantom thereof. Know thou that the kingdom is the real world, and this nether place is only its shadow stretching out, a shadow that hath no life of its own. Its existence is only a fantasy, and nothing more. It is but images reflected in water and seeming as pictures to the eye. Abdu'l-Baha. Quote, be not satisfied with words, but seek to understand the spiritual meanings hidden in the heart of the words. Oh, and I'll end with this one. I think this is tremendously important for a lot of reasons. Healing among them, but also ufology and cryptozoology and certain faiths. quote, God has never created an evil spirit. All such ideas and nomenclature are symbols expressing the mere human or earthly nature of man. Promulgation of Universal Peace, Abdu'l-Baha talks in Boston in 1912. And then get this, and I'll tell you why in a moment. Quote, every created thing in the whole universe is but a door leading into his knowledge, a sign of his sovereignty, a revelation of his names, a symbol of his majesty, a token of his power, a means of admittance into his straight path. Every created thing in the whole universe is but a door. And I mention that because Mike Clellan has, in his talk and in the talk that in the interview that we were watching, he said that under hypnosis, in regression, to try to recall an abduction event that he feels he was subjugated to. During the event, he asked during the regression, he asked the hypnotist before he was put under to ask him, what's the deal with those owls? And so he was talking during hypnosis, and then at one point she said, okay, Michael, what is it with the owls? And he said, usually people are like whispering, but he spoke right up and he said, the owls are but a symbol on the door. We, meaning humanity, are crowded into a hallway like sardines, and on the other side of the door is the limitless universe. And he wants to try to push the door open. And that gets me to the whole point of the MUFON Symposium this year was that same sort of idea. Someone was talking about abduction survivors and experiencers, and they asked the people, the 400 people seated at the convention, to raise their hands if they had had a dream where they feel like they are leading a large group of people but don't know where to lead them to. And I was looking around the room, and like 40% of the hands in the room went up. It was a lot of people. And this healing subject, I've read a couple of things that seem very. Mike Clellan was talking about synchronicity in both of these elements, both of the interview and the talk at the symposium. And he said, the owls and the UFOs, of course, are all symbols. And he said, another thing that I find interesting is that the people who have experienced the owl symbology or have had owls around when they have also had encounters with other things, he said a very large percentage of those people are healers. And I was sitting there watching that the Thursday night before the symposium started, and suddenly I remembered that I hadn't remembered when I wrote down these notes, when I put these notes on paper. I studied Reiki. I'd forgotten about that. I don't practice it all the time, but I studied it. Barbara and I both did when we were in Israel. We got to the first level, whatever that is, where they put the symbol on your hands, and we know how to do it. And I had completely forgotten that. So I fit right in with what he was saying. And he said the number of people who know Reiki is like a very fine sliver of the population. And I found all of that very synchronistic. So I hope that some of these quotations might be useful to you if you're interested in healing, and I think we all are, and we're all, like there are no experts regarding the forest people, but I think all of us are to a greater degree experts in healing ourselves, and we've all experienced healing many times, or we wouldn't be here. So I hope that some of this is useful for you. And lastly, if you've made it this far, or if you encounter any of your friends who said, I'd get tired of him reading about this faith, whatever it is that this particular faith is not imperialistic at all. They don't care, and I don't care, whether you believe the underlying ideas of the faith, which are basically love and unity. If you don't believe in what it says at all, that's fine with me. That's above my pay grade. My purpose with this whole thing in writing the articles for MUFON and in the YouTube channel is just to make people interested in ufology and healing, which they said at the symposium, spiritual healing is the next step in all of this. Just want to make you aware that these writings exist, and they are free online and searchable if you want to like go in and type in some of the words, a group of words, to search them and see what they are in their original context. Because there's more to say. They're in the middle of a book or the middle of a passage, and I just give you a few lines. But that was also the other thing that came out of the symposium. It's not about proving that we saw something in the sky or saw something in the woods or saw something made out of granite that we can't make today. The next step, pretty much everybody agreed, is spiritual healing. And I find that totally fascinating. That's a good direction to be trying to go. So with that, I hope you enjoyed the episode. I hope I see you next time. Talk to you later. Bye.